Do you know if you have users or potential bad actors running Linux distributions within your Windows environment, creating a potential security risk? Well, AI Query can help you find out. Let's hop in the tech and show you exactly how. Okay, so pretty cool use case that was shared with me recently that I want to break down for you all, which was effectively how can I identify where Windows Subsystem for Linux is being utilized within my Windows environment? So, for those of you not familiar, Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL for short, is effectively a means of being able to run Linux distributions on Windows machines without requiring additional infrastructure. So, can be super helpful and legitimate in a bunch of ways, like it can be used for scripting, or I know I myself use it to run Docker Desktop, which Docker Desktop requires WSL2 to be enabled. However, it is still critically important for IT and security admins to be cognizant of where Windows Subsystem for Linux is enabled in their environment, as bad actors can potentially utilize it to bypass traditional security methods. So, context is king, but let's figure out first where it's enabled across our environment, and then we'll add some of that context. So, naturally, we are AI query. We're going to use AI, and then right here we'll say using Windows tables. Where is WSL enabled? And hit generate. Probably don't need the Windows tables context, but whatever. This is what happens when I type it live. But again, context is king because if it's seen on an HR individual's machine, that's pretty weird. Maybe that throws up some red flags and shouldn't be there. If it's seen on my machine or a developer's machine, maybe it's being used for Docker or something of that nature. And so what we have here, as we can see, the query generated for us is using the Windows optional features table, which is excellent. And it's looking specifically for Windows Subsystem for Linux. So that looks all good and exactly what we're hoping for. We'll go on ahead and we'll hit accept, give it a title, say WSL audit, and then specify a few devices here. Um, and hit execute. So then as always, we'll pivot on over to results and we should have data chugging in here momentarily. All right, perfect. And we can see we already have a number of devices responding. So if we go ahead and we check out the results, we can see for two devices here, our desktop device and then an EC2 instance, we have the state of 1, which means it is enabled. I could have added in a case statement, but since it had state name, figured would kind of be overkill, and we can see Windows Subsystem for Linux. So perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for. So we know it is enabled on these two devices, which is expected. Again, as I mentioned, I use it for Docker Desktop. So that's not that weird that it's enabled on this device. It's a little weird it's enabled on this device, but let's hone in here and say, okay, we actually want to dig into this a little bit more now that we know where it exists and where it's enabled in our environment. And we can go ahead and we can extract some of this content via the registry and get some more information about the distros being utilized. Or on the machine, we could go live. We could run WSL-L, which is list-V, which is verbose, and it will list the distros that are installed on that machine. But custom extensions are really freaking cool, guys, if you haven't understood that from the like 6 videos I've made on it, effectively allowing you to extend the capabilities of OS Query to essentially anything you want. And in this case, I actually built a custom extension around Windows Subsystem for Linux information, which goes ahead and actually extracts out just the user context of who's running these distributions or who's running the subsystem for Linux, any applicable distributions, the version of those distributions, like Ubuntu 2022 or 2204, things of that nature. The version, which is of Windows Subsystem for Linux 1 or 2. It's not going to get the verbose version, but we can get that if we wanted to. I just kept it simple. The current existing state, is it enabled or not? Any applicable paths, so if you wanted to actually see where those exist, or where they may be writing to. And then, as I mentioned, I always add this little error field for when I'm developing extensions myself in case the extension doesn't generate any data. Is it because there's no data there? Or is it because I wrote something wrong? So throw up an error. So just a little thing I like to do. And we can see if we look at the code, here's what we have. We don't need to go through all of it. Again, AI generated and I added it in. And then under deployments, we can see I've deployed it to that one desktop device that is legitimately using Windows Subsystem for Linux. So now what I can do is I can go overhead back to create query and say select star from our custom extension, which was AIQWSL, and then say custom extension WSL distro context. Of course, I can't spell. And then we'll specify our target device and hit execute. And once again, we should see results trickling in here momentarily. And here we go. Okay, so we have results from our device. And if we go check those out, we can see that we actually do have data. So that error field is null. So I can go ahead and just remove that. And as mentioned, we can see it's alphabetical order if you don't specify an order. Otherwise, it is whatever order you put into the query. But in this case, didn't specify, just did select star. So we can see the base path of where the actual distro exists. So right here under app data local WSL and then a GUID for the distro itself, the distribution name Ubuntu, the version 2404, the current state and that it stopped, the user belongs to, and then the version of Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is 2, which again, if I wanted to, I could change it to get more context, but right now we just want to know is it Windows Subsystem for Linux 1 or 2? We don't care if it's 2.18, etc. But where we do have red flags is, so again, context is king, and it may be normal that this user is running an Ubuntu distribution, needed, maybe being used for Docker desktop or some sort of development, but why is Kali Linux being run on that? That's not normal and that shouldn't be used in a business context. So now we need to go have a talk with this user and say, hey, Nick, what are you doing here? Come on, man. You shouldn't be running Kali Linux. Or maybe they're not running Kali Linux and maybe a bad actor's on that machine. Either way, at least it's stopped right now, but we need to go take action on this. So quick, simple use case of auditing where it's enabled across our environment, and then how you can utilize custom extensions or a different query for registry to go on and get additional context into how it's being utilized to determine, with the context of your environment, is this good? Is this potentially bad? Is this something we need to look into further? So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any other use cases, please let me know. Otherwise, check out our videos on YouTube and LinkedIn. And until next time, see ya, everybody.